Hello, and welcome back to the Deal Breakdown Podcast. I'm Wesley with Meetin Real Estate, your buyer's agent.
And my name is Phong Tran. I am with Tran Property Group. I'm your seller's agent.
And
And
together,
together,
we
we
are
are
the
the
Deal
Deal
Breakdown.
Breakdown.
Welcome back, everybody. It's been a minute. A lot of things came up last year, and now we're back. It's 2026, a new year. How you feeling?
Man, yeah, we had a lot of, stuff we had to deal with last year, but we're definitely back. We're ready to hit 2026 strong for the both of us, buyer's agent and seller's agent. And so, yeah, let's get into it, man.
Absolutely. And it's 2026. It's the new year. Happy New Year, Fong. And with the new year, as we did last year, we're going to do a breakdown 2025. So first, we'll go into personally how we did, what we kind of saw and felt through the year. Then we'll go into actual statistics. I'm going to give you 10 stats nationwide. We're going to talk about those. And then we're going to talk about the localized market. Some stats from there to help with our local Portland Metro viewers, people we deal with day to day. And then at the very end, we're going to go over our predictions for 2026. And this podcast is certainly to get us back in the flow of recording. And we're going to be recording again on a regular basis. At the same time, we want this episode to not only arm our clients and who we work with, but at the same time, help out other agents. I know that we have a lot of agents that view this podcast. I know I speak to a few that find this helpful. So hopefully this helps you through this year. We want everybody to succeed, clients and agents included. So without further ado, Phong, tell me about 2025 for you. Personal production, what you found in the market, like personally, what you saw. Maybe it'll line up with some of the stats we go over later.
So, in terms of my person production, I ended at 13 units sold. I don't know the exact, sales volume, but what I saw, especially at the very beginning of the year, was it's very cold and slow. And I think that what I could attribute to that is definitely the high interest rates, large amount of inventory. Then things didn't really start clicking for me until around the April, May, which is kind of expected. You're entering the spring season. Now that's very, very common west. And so typically from November all the way till March, April is still considered winter. And then once the sun starts shining, flowers are blooming. That's typically where the market starts to heat up. But something I noticed this year compared to the previous years that I've noticed, Wes, is that even though it was the spring market, it ended up still being somewhat slow, at least for me. And again, I'm comparing this to the past couple years whenever I was selling real estate consistently. So what did I see? I still saw longer days on market, a boatload of inventory. I think statistically around that time frame, you'll have to probably pull this up on the RMLS, is we're probably hovering anywhere between 2 to 3 months of inventory.
Mm-hmm.
Now, guys, if you actually look back all the way back to 2020, this is the highest level of inventory that we saw, obviously, since the COVID years. And so it kind of puts a question mark of what we kind of saw this year in terms of sales and production. And then as we led into the summer market, it was still cold, somewhat dead. Obviously, homes started selling for myself as well as Wes. But, you still saw a lot of inventory, a lot of homes just sitting on the market. If you guys, I'm sure as you drove down your neighborhood, you probably saw a lot of for sale signs, whoever, wherever. And so going into the fall market, that's where things become even more cold. But fortunately, this is actually where things started to pick up quite drastically for me. Maybe it's my marketing that I was doing heavily at the beginning of the year or the first half of the year. But, that's where I started getting transactions under contract, getting closed. I'm talking to a lot more sellers as well as buyers. Then I ended up in December, obviously last month, guys, and it was actually my best month out of the year. I ended up closing 4 months, or I'm sorry, I ended up closing 4 transactions in that month alone, and it was a very, lucrative month for me.
Well, first off, congrats on
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah. It was a good month, but I mean, just to wrap everything up,
It
it
was
was
slow
slow
at
at
first.
first. I think it was actually slow throughout the whole year, and maybe I was potentially working harder, or my marketing dollars actually started, clicking, and my conversion rate started going up. And so, as we head into 26, before I get into that, what was your thoughts on 2025? You've obviously had one of the biggest years in your real estate career, correct?
Yeah, no, that is correct. So this last year, 21 homes sold. Volume was just under 11 million. We track very closely on the volume, or at least I did. I had a goal. Yeah, and so I want to parrot a lot of what you said. Obviously you're more in a unique situation, striking out on your own, especially for this year, probably gaining traction more and more throughout the year. However, I'm going to parrot that April and May were astounding. And the stats show that actually, that this last year, April and May were the two biggest months. And, statistically, it's about right, right? It's cyclical, it's seasonal, right? A lot of people don't want to move during the holidays. And at the end of the year, it's raining, it's winter, whatever. So, personally, best year yet. Good mix of sellers this year for me as well from the buyer's agent. Who would have thought? And what I did see was very similar. I do work with a lot of buyers, and this year especially was all about closing costs for buyers. My goodness, it was by and large one of the biggest thing, and that's always been a thing for buyers trying to get closing costs paid for by the seller. But this year, oh my goodness, it was almost every buyer needed it for either the actual closing costs, right? The upfront closing costs from the lender, or to buy their rate down.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, I didn't transact on a lot of buyers this year, but every single buyer that I had, we had some sort of closing costs. And I have a transaction closing this month, and it was the most I've had, especially considered last year. And I was able to secure like 16,500 in closing costs. And so I think, statistically, numbers wise, I don't think we're truly in a buyer's market, but it for sure is a buyer's market
It
compared
feels like,
to,
yeah.
yeah, for sure. Because I think statistically, a true buyer's market isn't until like what, 6 months of inventory.
I think that's it, what we would consider a heavy, like a God, what's I can't remember the term, but an aggressive buyer market, I think is the term, where it incredibly favors the buyer. I will say, inventory, I think personally was a good marker previous, not maybe not now, just because a lot of people aren't putting their homes on the market. So that I don't like months of inventory as a good barometer of buyers or sellers market. I will say that, working with sellers, again, the buyers were asking for closing costs, and I saw that too, and I had to prepare my sellers for it. I will also say I became way more aggressive with my buyers when it came to repairs or closing costs because of things in the inspection. It just felt way more in favor for the buyer, because if it didn't work out or they didn't go with us,
You'll just go
we're
right
going to
next
go find
door.
another home that's been
Yeah.
sitting for months. And so,
So no, I completely agree with you. I mean, it for sure favors a buyers. And so as a buyer, the consumers that we're talking to, it's definitely important to work with someone who's going to advocate for you, fight for those repairs, because when the rates drop, and they will continue to drop, are we going to see 2-3% interest rate ever again? Probably not in this decade, but we potentially might see, anywhere between 5 to 6%. And that's where the floodgates open. Would you agree?
totally. Yeah, 5% is such a. I think it's going to be a big handle, right, number. But there's a point in time this last year that I was securing below 5% because of closing costs, FHA. And so, interest rates, they're leveling out. It kind of is what it is. And so because of that, we're seeing these prices, or at least for me, coming down.
Yeah, the shock value is over.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the current rate, I think it's like 6.2 right now. Whenever I checked, that is considered the new norm. Like, either you're going to purchase a house potentially now or next year, or values will continue increasing. And we did see a slight value increase from 24 to 25.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like we each had some really good years despite what we saw in the market. It definitely slowed down. We'll see from 24 in terms of, you know, volume and in terms of units sold. And yeah, it just feels different. Again, we're in January, and I know last time we talked January, we talked about the dues coming up for agents. So, Fong, do you think we're gonna again see a huge exodus from this line of work?
I don't think so. I mean, I think whenever I ran numbers from 20, the year 24 and the year of last year, I think again, numbers wise, we sold the amount of homes in the entire Portland metro was the same. And so I think it was around like 7,500 homes sold. Again, this is just the Portland metro, not any other one. And so I don't necessarily think more attrition will occur. I actually think more agents will start trying to enter the market because I do believe this year, 2026, the economy is going to improve, the interest rates will improve, and I think could open up the door for more people to become agents. And so there's going to be more competition. But I think as a consumer, sellers, I mean, you made a good point very earlier that, the sellers, they're not wanting to list their homes, right? Typically the sellers that are listing are the people that actually have to move, whether it's divorce, dealing with some sort of death, maybe it's a new baby, diapers, or someone's getting married. And so I think the people who do actually have to move, they're quite serious. The sellers that I'm talking to and I've all transacted, it's not because they just want to do it. Maybe it's to upgrade or downsize. They're being forced into that position because of a job or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing that is going to happen more and more as we, go along through the years here, and I noticed it a lot more this year than I would say in 24, was the age of homeowners. It keeps increasing, right? Because most homeowners are not young. They're older and they're starting to move to homes or pass away. And so we're seeing a lot more of that. I'm working with a client right now. I call her I call her the estate sniffer because every single property that she likes is an estate sale, and she doesn't even list that it's an estate sale, but she somehow finds it. And so more homes are gonna become available because of that age, and,
Yeah, I
they
listened
have
to
to
a
sell.
podcast, I think it was like last week or something, but the last age of what is considered a baby boomer is going to be 2030. And so from now, which is 2026, then so about 4 years, you're going to see a lot more people either just offloading properties, dealing with probate, or simply just downsizing. So I think these next 4 years are going to be critical if you're in one of those situations, because it's best for you to start planning now rather than being in a situation where you have to do probate, which can actually delay a lot of things.
And make it so much harder for whomever's left, right? Whoever's still here. Yeah, yeah, it's the age of the homeowner. It's getting up there. Yeah, no, we had a good year. Let's talk statistics now, Fong. I want to go over some big market-wide statistics, and market-wide, I mean the whole United States of America, and this is from NAR, National Association of Realtors. These are 10 different things that I wanna talk about real quick, and just kinda get your take on it. So, in 2025, probably a lot of these are gonna be obvious, first-time homebuyers sank to an all-time low than ever before, okay? Now, the National Association of Realtors started tracking statistics in 1981. Okay, so before 1981, maybe it was different. But first-time home buyers, do you want to guess how much of the market they make up?
I mean, it's definitely pretty high. It's
You think so?
no
No.
20, 30%.
Ooh, real close. 21%. First-time homebuyers now make up just 21% of the market. It's the lowest share since before they started tracking in 1981.
I mean, I it is kind of shocking hearing that, but at the same time, once I actually start thinking about it, analyzing it, it makes sense because first time home buyers, that demographic is our age, millennials. Um, Late 20s, early 30s. I actually think it's just early 30s now. It's just so unaffordable to purchase a house. And so unless you're getting help from family, but there's a lot of factors.
And yeah, so just to give you a comparison stat, before 2008, consistently, year over year, they made up 40% of the home sales. Okay, so just to give you kind of like what would you call it? Not a baseline control. There it is. A good control is usually there at 40%. Now 21% of the market. And I'm going to skip down here because I think it goes and ties into what you just said with the millennials. The median age of first time home buyers. Okay. What do you think the median age of first time home buyers is this last year?
This last year,
Mhm.
36.
You're very close. 40.
Wow.
The median age of first-time home buyers is 40, a record high. Now, repeat buyers rose to a median age of 62. So sellers are following a very similar trend, holding on much longer. Now, man, you talk about 40 and millennials, I think technically they're 85 to 94, I want to say ish right there, that 10-year span. And so we are seeing millennials finally hitting, they're in their 30s, certainly, and almost 40, if not 40 already. They started to become 40 this year, the first millennial. Okay. So what that means is a lot of first time homebuyers aren't even millennials. They're Gen X.
Which is the
Just before.
generation before.
Just before millennials.
Now, would you say millennials are going to be now the biggest generation of homeowners, or is it going to be Generation X?
No, well, think about this. So if the median age is 40 and only the oldest millennials are 40, and it's the median. So statistically, it's being pulled from both sides. What that tells me is it's probably just the age is going to keep going up. Millennials can't afford homes, is what this tells me, is what these stats tell me.
And that I'd agree. I mean, because that was last year's numbers before it was age 40. I'm curious on what it was like back in the day. Like it was probably late 20s or something like that. But we know it. The cost of living is going higher and higher. Rent is going higher and higher. Things are becoming less affordable. And so people are delaying lifestyle choices, whether it's having a family, they'd rather live in more of a city or suburb. And so unaffordability will always be a crisis in the US, it sounds like. And that's
Totally.
stemming from, our demographic.
And then the prices just rose so much over over this last decade, especially. And just again, to give you a baseline, in the 1980s, statistically, it was the late 20s. You'd buy your first home. Okay. And before 2008, it was 30. Okay. And then it slowly has risen 31, 32 throughout. But this is, obviously the first time we've seen a 4 in front of the age. So
Yeah, I was not expecting 40.
me neither.
That's actually quite shocking.
And it is quite shocking. And I'll go into this stat. It makes sense to me just because it makes a little bit more sense. The third stat here going off of this is people are holding on to their homes much, much longer. Now, home buyers are planning to stay put much longer. The median expected tenure in a purchased home is now 15 years.
What did it used to be? I think it was only like 7 years, right?
So
It's almost doubled.
this marks a significant increase. Now in 2000 to 2008, those 8 years, it was averaged about 6 years. You'd stay in a home, and probably sell, right? After about 6 years. After 2008, it slowly rose to 11 years. But now we're seeing this last year, about 15 years. So it marks lower inventory, right? From people, even though it's a buyer's market, we're not seeing the 6 months because sellers don't want to sell. They have 2.5% interest rate, 3, 4, whatever.
I guess you can also attribute to, these long generation families who own property at a very, back in the 80s, 90s. Maybe they're just going to hold on to it and continue holding on to it to pass on to their kids or whatnot, because what's the issue? Affordability. And so if they can easily just transfer their asset into one of their offsprings, then yeah, I mean that's the transfer of wealth that we're seeing in the US.
Certainly. Speaking of transfer of wealth, you ready for another stat? We're going to do record highs now, okay? Because we did have record highs. We had record lows. I'll come back to record lows. We had record high all cash buyers. All cash home purchases have reached an all-time high, averaging 26% in 2025. So 1 out of every 4 homes was purchased all cash.
What do you attribute that to? Is it their family selling and they just have cash to buy?
Equity.
Yeah,
More than likely equity.
equity from a past home.
From a past home, I would assume, it's gonna be because there's been if you think about, let's say you bought something in 2010 or 2015, and just the sheer amount of appreciation you've seen on that home, let alone the older people that have, full equity in their home, cash goes a much longer way. And the older generation is downsizing, as you've said. So we're seeing a lot more all cash. I worked with a good amount of all cash buyers this last year. Actually, yeah, record high, more than I've ever had cash buyers this last year.
I would agree. I mean, on the selling side, the listing agent side, I would say I would probably receive 50 to 60% offers that were all cash, which is advantageous for sure. I mean, there's no bank you don't got to deal with, no contingencies other than inspection, and it's usually a much faster close.
And this has been, by the way, slowly on the rise. But just to give you, again, a baseline, before 2010, it was 10%, 1 in 10. Now it's 1 in 4 are all cash. Now, interest rates don't affect cash buyers. So for them, seeing these prices go down is great, right? Because they don't have to care about interest rates. They love interest rates being high if you're all cash.
Because what's hedge against inflation?
It's real estate.
Yeah.
So record highs. Again, some of these are going to make sense. This one, I was not expecting. We had record high down payments in 2025. Okay. So I'm going to give you, in 2025, the median down payment among all buyers was 19%. Okay. No, this is last year, 19% across every buyer. For first time home buyers, the median was 10% down.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, people are trying to offset that monthly cost. And so bringing in a higher down payment, maybe it's gift from family or just proceeds given to them. I mean, because right now, even like a $500,000, actually, that's not even the median in Portland anymore. I think it's like 580. And assuming you put 10% down, I think you're still going to pay anywhere between $3,000 to $4,000, if not a little bit more, depending on your financial background. And so that's a lot of money. $4,000 is a lot of money. So having an additional 10%, maybe to potentially save you $500 per month is gonna stretch for you.
Totally. And also a big thing too, speaking of that debt to income ratio, people have to have a higher down payment to hit that debt to income ratio. And if the age is older, right, for median age of first time home buyers, usually they're going to have a little bit more money later on in life. Have years to save. And then repeat buyers, an average of 23% down. So, we're not counting the all cash, obviously, because it's 100% down, but just for lenders, right? If you're getting a loan, usually that's what we're seeing, but that's a big increase. Now, something on that, and this is part of this stat, is, personal savings remain the most common source of down payment funds. Makes sense, right? 59% of people rely on savings. Over 26% tapped into their 401ks, IRAs, or stocks. 22% received help from relatives or friends. So we're still seeing most people rely on their savings, not dipping into their retirement fund. And then a good portion still relying on family, which tracks actually.
And it's going to make sense. I mean, we're in a very high rate environment compared to a few years ago. And so the more financial help you get, that's just going to be better for you in terms of debt to income ratio, like you said.
Mm-hmm. And just a fun little remark here. These are almost the same exact numbers in 1989. Do you want to know a fun thing about 1989? Almost the same down payment. Interest rates were at a record high.
That's fast.
Compared to the years after and before.
There's a question. What happened after the interest rate elevated into the 90s?
So into the 90s, the down payment decreased quite a bit.
Because everything was easing.
Easing, exactly. We actually saw record low. I mean, when you're probably gonna guess when the record low down payments were just before 2008, in 2005, 2006, 2007, and then it's been slowly increasing. And this is a percent, not based on amount of money, and we've hit those 89 numbers and just above for first-time home buyers, so pretty intense.
So that's actually a very good thing. I mean, that actually gives a more positive outlook that what we always tell you, real estate's very cyclical. And so, yes, rates are elevated compared to a few years ago, but rates will drop. Again, will we ever see 2, 3% ever again? Maybe not in this decade, but at some point rates will fall. And then when rates fall, what happens to the value? Floodgates will open, buyers will re-enter, and then valuations will continue to not necessarily skyrocket, but it's going to have, your natural 3 to 5% year over year appreciation. So that's actually very positive that we are very similar to the 1989. And then as we enter, this year and of course enter the next decade, things are expected to be positive.
It's pretty wild when you look at this, when you look at this graph, and I could absolutely send it to you, how you can predict the future from the past. It's pretty intense, and interesting.
Jerome Powell, he copies, I think it's the Volcker's model in terms of how he wants to increase and reduce rates. And so and he's copying it from, what we saw back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Let's go back to record lows. Record low for sale by owners. I was actually not expecting that. I thought there was gonna be a lot more.
I think I think the reason why is because it's just so much harder to sell. To
That makes sense.
sell a home now, you actually do need a professional like myself or Wes to come up with a strategy, come with a game plan, and then most importantly, come with the valuation of your house. Unfortunately, we're not in 2020, 2021 valuation mindset anymore. You can't just list high because you'll think you get it. You got to list, if not slightly below, but at a market appropriate level to actually move your house, depending on why you're wanting to sell. Now, is there's going to be those sellers out there who want to not believe that and just list their house outrageously? But what happens? They eventually expire. They become page 8, 9, 10 on Zillow or Redfin, and they're just a misnomer now.
It's, yeah, it totally makes sense. It's a lot harder, and I'm gonna give you the actual stat. Only 5% of homes sold as for sale by owners, an all-time low, ever. The crazy thing too, and I'm gonna go on my other stat because it's absolutely part of this, is we had a record high, makes sense, of sellers use real estate agents, right? One goes down, the other has to go up. And what's interesting is there's actually we're this makes sense if you think about it. The reason I thought FSBOs would be more important or higher, not an all-time low, but I thought it would be higher, is because you hear all the time, I don't want to pay my agent, blah, 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 blah. Right? Commission, meh, 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 meh. And then especially with this big change with, AR and not listing the commission that you pay the buyer's agent and all this stuff. So record low FSBOs for sale by owners, record high people using agents as a seller. We actually had more people, more agents, double side than ever before, which makes sense coming off of this. Double side meaning you're a disclosed limited agent where you basically represent the seller and the buyer on both. And a big thing I'm sure that happened and shifted it was people have access on Zillow and all these things to find their own homes that they want to purchase, find the listings, and they can contact the listing agent directly, right? And a lot of people will do that to try to save on commission, right? Or when they put an offer in, make it a little bit more appealing because they're not going to ask the seller for as much commission. Now, is that going to be great for you as a client, as a buyer in the end? Probably not because
Yeah, I mean, I am not a big advocate for double ending deals. Does it sound good financially? Absolutely. You made a very good point. I don't think, yes, they're an individual, they're a disclosed limited agency, so they don't actually represent either side. But if you are trying to enlist or provide a job to the listing agent to be your advocate to buy a house, more than likely they're still going to side with the seller because typically in a transaction, most of the time the seller kind of controls it. It's going to be different nowadays, especially as we're more into a buyer's market, but the seller at the end of the day, they do kind of dictate some things. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's very interesting.
Whose side they gonna pick when the repairs come in, right? Like, what are they gonna what's the agent gonna do? Say, "Ah, man, I wonder who I am gonna pick to win this one."
And not every state allows
Yeah,
you to double in.
New York does not.
Yeah, obviously in the state of Oregon, yes, we do. You have to have a principal broker to be that intermediary person. But yeah, what's your take? I mean, if I were in a situation, I've double ended once, but this is at Maine Real Estate. But if it was now, if I would have presented an idea to double in one, I typically would just give that buyer to, one of my team members.
Yeah, I mean, I've never done it personally. I've had the opportunity to do it. It just didn't end up working out. Um, and obviously, you look let's be honest, you're gonna look at it and go, "Ooh, I get to make more money." Uh, however, yeah, I'd rather just hand it off to a team member or to someone else that I trust because first off, what a headache to represent both sides as an agent. At the same time, more than likely, I'm going to be biased towards one end of the stick, right? Whether that is the seller or even the buyer. It could be, and there there's no way you can't be biased.
I think it just opens almost a can of worms. Even though yes, it's disclosed limited agent. I think there's going to be conflict of interest behind closed doors that it could actually potentially lead to, potentially getting sued or legal troubles down the line. And so, again, always consult with a real estate agent like myself or Wes to be able to lead you down a path that's going to give you the most success to, close on a transaction.
All right, let's two more quick quick ones, and then we'll go into some more localized. Fewer households with children are buying homes. The share of buyers with children under 18 has dropped to a historic low. Just 24% of recent buyers compared to 58% in 1985. It's wild. But at the same time, it is concurrent with people are having less kids. Kids are expensive. Talk about affordability also comes to having a family. And obviously, when you have kids, usually you're going to look for a larger home. And a lot of times, the home comes before the kid, typically. And so if you're not in a place, this is going to sound ridiculous. I'm going to tell you how I compare it. It's an anecdote. When I was growing up, I had a pet lizard. Okay. You ever seen the movie Holes? Okay. Great movie. You know those lizards in the movie Holes? Yes, they painted bearded dragons. I had a bearded dragon when I was growing up and started out small. And I remember being told when we got the lizard that, I asked, how big is it going to get? And they said that depends on one, how much you feed it and how big of an enclosure you have. They will only grow so big compared to the living space that they're in. Because if they're too big for the living space, that doesn't make sense. Um, so the reason I bring that up is usually if you're in a two-bedroom home, that's too small of an enclosure to grow your family to a certain size. And because of affordability of homes, it's a lot tougher to buy a 3, 4, 5 bedroom home. And so people are just not having kids or they're not looking to purchase these larger homes. A lot of families are renting, obviously, because it's a little bit more affordable. And yeah, so fewer households with children than ever before.
I think we could see probably maybe a small spike somewhere down the line because there's still going to be those families who will decide to have kids and they're going to need to eventually upgrade. And so I think at some point, years down the line, I don't know when, we will see a spike. But that's a fascinating stat, Wes. But I'm also not surprised by it.
Me neither. And also the median age for having kids has risen for millennials specifically, and and most millennials are getting to that age. Okay, last one here. Didn't think this was it, but it kind of makes sense. New home purchases saw a tick up. More buyers are tempted to buy new, with the share of new home purchases rising slightly to 16%, matching a level that hasn't been seen since 2006, just before 2008 crisis.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Um, I don't I don't do a lot of new construction. I think I've only sold one. I typically deal with resale. But I'm wondering why. Is it just the fact that people don't want to deal with repairs because it's so expensive, and they're like they don't know what they're getting into, and they're choosing new construction. What do you think?
I think it's a couple things. So I actually just work with a buyer that bought new construction, and I learned a lot through that. It's very different. And first thing I learned, so this last year, I worked with 3 buyers in new construction, first to own the home, right? Which is more than I've ever done. 3. Wow. Okay, great. One, they're buying it because they're younger and they don't want to deal with repairs. They don't walk into a home and go, okay, in 5 years, or 10 years, got to redo the roof, or the furnace is 20 years old, or got to replace these single pane windows. You're walking into a brand new home. You're not going to worry about that roof for decades. You're not going to worry about the furnace for decades. There's a lot of ease of mind, which I saw. The other thing too is, and I've heard this a lot, new construction builders and developers took an insane hit in the 2008 crisis, and they have been recovering ever since then. And then COVID happened, which hit them again. And so they're playing catch up. And I said all that to get to the incentives. New construction, they need to sell to catch up. And so the incentives are pretty ridiculous. Again, I'm going to give you an anecdote here. Working with these buyers, we walk into this, it's a townhome. It's a nice townhome. First things first, it's new construction. So there's tax abatement benefits that they were able to get and apply for, which is amazing. The tax abatement that they have, they essentially pay no property taxes for the first 10 years. Insane. Now they had to meet certain income requirements, right? That number one, plus a lot of these larger companies like Holt Homes, like DR Horton, a lot of them are offering buy downs on rates. And right now, where people are looking at every penny, that could be the thing that wins them over.
Yeah, and I think appreciation in new construction is also a little bit more than a resale, and so there's a lot of factors. But yeah, I mean that's a really cool fact. I mean it makes sense if there's a lot of buyer incentives. Even on the agent side, I received an email this morning that this Gresham new development is offering 5% PAC. I was like, obviously, I'm sure there's something, and I don't know what the price of that new development is, but the developers, builders, they're, for lack of a better word, desperate to offload their inventory because they've been overbuilding ever since the 2008 financial crisis. And then, like he said, COVID had a little bit of a wrench to them.
All right. Well, those are the nationwide statistics. We're going to take a quick break, then we're going to come back and talk more locally. All right. We're back. And we're going to talk locally, Portland Metro. Quick here, then we'll get to predictions because I want to talk to you about each county. Okay. The New World, 4 counties here: Multnomah County, Washington County, Clackamas, and Clark County. So we are including Clark. Little Vancouver action. Okay. So first county up is Multnomah. Okay. Portland, Gresham, Fairview, Troutdale? Troutdale. Okay. So in 2024, this is compared 2024, total property sold in Multnomah County was 8,654, right from the MLS. Okay. The total value in thousands of dollars So it's a lot of money. It's like $4.8 billion. Okay, $4.85 billion. Average price 560,000. We're gonna go to last year. So 8,654 in 2024. How much do you think it decreased in 2025?
I'm gonna say probably stayed still within the 8,000.
Okay, you'd be wrong. 7,150
Oh
for the whole
wow.
year. So that is obviously about 1,500 less total property sold. Obviously, that's going to affect the total value sold. So it's about $700 million less in volume sold. Now, here's what's interesting: the average price in Multnomah, 2024 was 560. Average price in Multnomah this year was 582,000. So average price went up, which I guess lends to the fact that there's more cash buyers, right? And prices still rose, I guess overall, right? Because it is the average. So yeah, what do you think? What do you think's the main contributor there for average price going up?
I think it's a combination of cash. People are, they're willing to spend that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm quite stumped because that's actually quite shocking. Even though maybe it's the fact that no, yeah, I don't know. I really don't know.
I also think that people are holding something that could be interesting too, that might be thrown in there. Maybe a small factor is a transaction. I just went pending yesterday, and closing costs are a big thing. And a lot of times, what I'll find is they might raise the price a little bit to cover certain closing costs. So going from 475 on this transaction to 480 of purchase price to cover the 10,000 in closing costs we wanted. Okay, so it could be a little bit of that. I I do think it's all cash. 1 in 4 transactions being all cash is bonkers, okay? That's insane. That's so much. Okay, Washington County saw a very similar decline. They also saw a decline in average price, which I'm gonna talk about why I think that is.
Washington County is obviously the west side, so Beaverton, Hillsborough, Forest
Mhm.
Grove goes up north a little bit, I think, and then it goes down to Tualatin, and then I think Wilsonville as well. But that side has a lot more new construction, which typically has higher value. So that's actually pretty astounding to me.
I just thought of something for Multnomah County too. So this total property sold. Okay. This is not, I don't have the statistics on like fail sales, which I'm sure we could talk about at another podcast. But condos also saw a record low purchase. And so a lot more people are buying detached homes than a condo for their first home. And it's because of HOA fees and obviously taxes and everything. So I bet a lot more people, instead of buying condos at a lower price point, probably bought something a little bit higher to just avoid a condo. Washington County. So 2024, 7,100, whoops, 2024, 6,800 homes sold in Washington County. This year, 5,439 homes sold in Washington County. So a decrease of about 1,400 homes. Average price point went from 617,000 to 605,000. So it did decrease. I am definitely going to contribute that a lot to the two big companies that hire people over in Washington County, Intel and Nike, laying off quite a lot of people. So I had listings in Washington County that were sitting and reducing price because nobody wanted to buy in a Renko station because their Intel job's gone. So we saw a lot less demand. That's my guess for that.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, I helped a good handful of people move out of state because they lost their job from Intel. Um, I mean, they lost what, like 20, 30% of their workforce? Not lost, they laid them off, but that's a lot of people.
Significant portion.
And Nike dealt with some of that as well.
They did. Not
Not
to
to
the
the
same
same.
extent, obviously, as Intel, but yeah, there's a big decrease. Clackamas, you're not in Clackamas. You're in Clackamas. You are, yeah. Okay, Clackamas County also saw a decrease. Total property sold in Clackamas, 4,934 properties in 2024. And 2025, 3,963. 1,000 less properties sold. Average price point also went down from 720,000 down to 699 average price point. So again, a decrease in price point.
I can see it. It's probably, I mean, obviously, Clackamas County is Westland, portion of Lako. And so obviously these are much higher price points. And so, they're going to slash their prices, at a bigger degree. You're talking hundreds of thousands at once versus maybe just 10 to 15 for like a $500,000 house.
Totally. Yeah. Bigger price drops. Makes sense. Now, I saved the best for last. The most shocking one, Clark County. Now, Clark County saw the biggest decrease out of these four counties in terms of volume sold and property sold. In 2024, 6,499 homes were sold in 2024 in Clark County. So 6,500. Okay. Clark County is much smaller, by the way, than these other counties. In 2025, 4,959 homes were sold in 2025. Why do you think that is? I have a guess.
I mean, I, I firmly believe it's because COVID happened. Everyone was dealing with the multnomah taxes and the bad crap about Oregon itself. And so people were moving across the river. And, the biggest year was, 23, 24. And so things are just, there's always going to be a roller coaster effect. And so it elevated quickly, everyone wanting to move across the river. Then, now it's starting to come down. And so I'm not surprised by it. I think Vancouver market, Clark County, Camas as well, is still a hotter market in terms of Portland. And so I think people are going to continue trying to move across the river, mostly because of, tax incentives, financial cost of living, stuff like that. That's my guess.
Yeah, I agree with that. The huge buzz of going to Vancouver, taxes was a big thing. At the same time, house prices had not caught up to the Oregon prices that we had seen. And now Vancouver prices have caught up. They buying a home in Vancouver is almost one for one for buying the same home in Portland now. Years past, it was not. You could get a good deal in Vancouver. Now the prices have risen and caught up. So the buzz is gone, essentially, is what it looks like. So big decrease. So yeah, overall, a lot less transactions within our known world, the Portland Metro, which makes sense. Now, do you predict we're going to have this be our transition here? 2026 predictions. Do you predict that these numbers will be going up? Do you think that we're going to have higher total properties sold in all four of these counties, in certain counties? What do you foresee for the Portland Metro?
I mean, across all counties, Clark County, Washington County, Clackamas, as well as Multnomah County, I do believe that value will slightly go up, as well as the number of transactions I think will probably go back to probably levels prior to this past year in 2025. Yeah, I think obviously there's a lot of factors. Rates will continue going down, in my opinion. I mean, at the beginning of 2025, we were seeing rates a little over 7%. Now we're seeing rates a little over 6%. That's a whole percentage. And so as people are continue saving their money, saving for the down payment, realizing that the shock value of high interest rates is pretty much over and that this is the new normal, and that if you want to buy a house and secure a house before values continue increasing and things become very unaffordable for you, I think people are going to realize that, they are going to they're going to have to purchase now. And I'm already seeing it. I mean, it's just the amount of people I talk to that are, yes, they're first time home buyers, But they're also sellers. They're just realizing that they need to actually start and plan a move.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I think that we're gonna have more total properties sold. Looking back, man, 2025, there was a lot going on, like so much change. Obviously, political change. There was, prices and everything was going up, and that it was, yeah, it was pretty rough. And we thought the interest rates would go down a lot more, and they didn't, right? And so 2025 was this flux point, I think. When you look at the graphs, right, you follow the trends that you see throughout history. We hit that point of like, yeah, this hurt. This was low. This was the low low. And so going into 26, again, I think that people are emotional. We're emotional creatures. I think people are kind of like, "Yeah, this is how it is. This this is it." And millennials are getting older. The new norm. We've been saying that forever. This is the new norm. Okay. What else do you predict in terms of, we could go interest rates, we could go maybe what you're going to see for your sellers, and I could go into what we see for buyers. What do you want to tackle first?
I think more sellers, as the population grows and gets older, I think more sellers will start hopping into the selling their homes, especially on the west side. You're still going to see continued layoffs because the economy on a big picture scale is not doing so great. And so you're going to see more sellers selling for that reason, but also because, for other reasons, they don't want to live in a colder climate area. They want to move to warmer areas. I mean,
Yeah.
we both help clients just like that. And so I think sellers are still going to be somewhat unrealistic, but they're probably going to start seeing that, okay, like maybe we need to settle at a lower price. For buyers, that's your realm, so let's hear what you think.
It reminds me of a meme that I saw. I thought it was super funny. It was sellers think it's 2020, buyers think it's 2008. God, there was a bunch of appraisers think it's whatever, right? Like I saw this meme, and it's so true. It's sellers are, they're holding on to this beautiful world of 2020 where I could get 5 offers over asking, and buyers are like, this home's been on market for 100 days. I'm going to come in and cut them at their knees. For buyers, I do predict this is our year. This is our year. You talk about sellers getting older, you talk about people holding on for longer, and they're trying to weather the storm. The sellers that wanted to sell in 22 when the interest rates spiked up and they wanted to buy, and they've been sitting and waiting to sell for when the interest rates go back to normal. It's been a few years, guys.
Oh yeah, and I think oh yeah, and I think I read a stat, I don't know how accurate it is, but I think sellers have not wanted to sell for so long because of the rates that it's caused about 40% of all homeowners within the whole US that want to sell, they also own their house free and clear. And so they're waiting to sell. And so if rates dip below 6, which again, I don't want to speculate here, um, but it's gonna open up the floodgates. It's just gonna make the real estate market, especially in our local area, a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah, I could agree. But buyers, I'm gonna go back to this. Buyers, it's your year. I'm ready to help you cut them at their knees because it's to do it more than ever before, like at the back end of 25 and coming into this year, man, it feels like, first off, it feels like a lot of people are terminating all the time. And yeah, buyers, it's your time to scoop up some stuff. That houses are sitting. I see price reductions constantly, and I don't think it's like this house is actually worth 500,000. We could get it for 475. I think it's more, this house is worth 500,000 and the seller expects 525. We're finally buying it for what it's actually worth. And so coming into that, knowing that this is the time to not spend upfront money, ask for closing costs, have some money in the emergency fund, right? God forbid anything happens, or for furniture, and ask for those closing costs. Buy that rate down. Get it now before the rate comes down, and now you're competing and actually buying it for more. So yeah, buyers, it's our time to shine for sure.
Yeah, I definitely do believe I would agree with that statement wholeheartedly. Like, it's your realm right now, buyers. Like, you're in the driver's seat. If you actually want to secure a viable asset that will continue appreciating year over year, then definitely talk to one of us. Just even if you're maybe 6 months or a year out, but have a strategy session with one of our preferred lenders and obviously us to really just talk and see what those options look like, so you have a better plan and you're ultimately prepared to purchase or sell your home down the line.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Have a plan of action. I think it's a great place to end. Fong, appreciate us being back, and we'll be back.
One last question.
Please.
So before we end it, Wes, how many homes are you going to sell today?
Oh God. Oh jeez. I I was thinking about asking this. I'm not gonna lie. I was thinking about asking this as the last question. I have some changes coming, which may change this number. My goal with these changes is to do 12 transactions this
Oh,
year.
wow. I think you can do more
One
than
a
that.
month. Set the bar low and then clear it. Uh, I mean, I would love to do more than 21 homes. My goal is less homes and higher volume and purchase price.
I think you'd be surprised. Again, this is obviously agent talk. I think you'd be surprised about the amount of work you do, the less transaction volume, but you'll actually be paid more. Um, because of the whole, political side of being a brokerage.
Of course.
But my personal goal for this year, I'm wanting to sell at least 25 homes this year.
Woo!
And I'm looking at my vision board as well as like my outlook of like all the consumers and the leads that I'm talking to, and I do believe I can hit that, and if not more. Yep.
25. Okay. 12 for me, 25 for Fong. Again, my price point, my average price, again, we're talking shop. My average price point this last year was a little bit lower, but it actually stayed in tow with weirdly the Multnomah County average price point. It was 580. Yeah. Year before I was 622. But hey, whatever. I want my average price point to be 700,000. Much higher. I work well with, wealthy people. No, but yeah, these are good goals. And I don't even know if this is going to be in the podcast. I like this. This is funny. But let's check back in. Obviously, this next year we're going to do a midway through the year check-in as well. Next episode is going to be coming out soon as well. This was obviously a long one because this was a recap of all of 2025. Hopefully some good stats. We're going to chunk this up into, bite-size clips for you to digest and have. At the same time, next week, we're going back to our 30-minute specials. We're going to be talking a little bit more. There's going to be some news probably to be shared with. We'll see. And I think we did a Phong Tran Q&A last time. Phong, I think it's time for you to ask me some questions as well.
Yep. So stay tuned for next episode where we dive deep into the mind of our buyer specialist at Mate and Real Estate. And stay tuned, guys. Again, my name is Phong Tran. I'm with Tran Property Group. If you're needing help purchasing or selling a home, definitely reach out to myself or one of my team members.
And I'm Westley, your buyer's agent, signing off. Y'all have a good one. Take care.